Right-wing terrorism or far-right terrorism is terrorism that is motivated by a variety of different right-wing and far-right ideologies, most prominently by neo-Nazism, neo-fascism, eco-fascism, white nationalism, white separatism, ethno-nationalism, religious nationalism, and anti-government patriot, sovereign citizen beliefs, and occasionally by anti-abortion and tax resistance. Modern right-wing terrorism largely emerged in Western Europe in the 1970s, and following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, it emerged in Eastern Europe. Right-wing terrorists aim to overthrow governments and replace them with nationalist and/or fascist regimes. They believe that their actions will set in motion events that will ultimately lead to the creation of these authoritarian governments. Although they often take inspiration from fascist Italy and Nazi Germany with some exceptions, right-wing terrorist groups frequently lack a rigid ideology. Right-wing terrorists tend to target people who they consider members of alien communities, but they may also target political opponents, such as left-wing groups and individuals. The attacks which are perpetrated by right-wing terrorists are not indiscriminate attacks which are perpetrated by individuals and groups which simply seek to kill people. The targets of these attacks are carefully chosen, because the targets of these attacks are often entire sections of communities. They are not targeted as individuals. Instead, they are targeted because they are representatives of groups which the terrorists consider alien. German economist Armin Kettel wrote in a 2011 article that right-wing extremist crime, which includes anti-foreigner and racist motivations, is associated with unemployment rates. As unemployment rates increase, REC also increases. A 2014 paper argues that right-wing terrorism increases with economic growth, seemingly due to its proponents often being people who lose out under economic modernization. Conversely, a 2019 study found that economic predictors did not predict right-wing terrorism. Rather, levels of extra-European immigration did. Right-wing terrorists did not want immigrants in their country and sought to drive them out with force. Increased migration thus caused greater resentment and thus greater motive for attacks. In 2016, Thomas Greven suggested that right-wing populism is a cause of right-wing terrorism. More simply put, populism supports the advancement of the average citizen, not the agendas of the privileged elite. Greven defines right-wing populists as those who support ethnocentrism and oppose immigration. Because right-wing populism creates a climate of us versus them, terrorism is more likely to occur. Vocal opposition to Islamic terrorism by Donald Trump has been obscuring right-wing terrorism in the US, where right-wing terror attacks outnumber Islamist and left-wing attacks combined. In the wake of the Christchurch mosque shootings at Al-Noor Mosque and Linwood Islamic Centre in Christchurch, New Zealand by terrorist Brenton Harrison Tarrant, expert in terrorism Greg Barton, of Deakin University in Australia, wrote of the toxic political environment that allows hate to flourish, saying that although right-wing extremism in Australia is not nearly as serious as the European neo-Nazi movements or the various types of white supremacy and toxic nationalism seen in American politics, both major parties attempted to win votes by repeating some of the tough language and inhumane policies which appear to reward right-wing populists. He further argued, the result has been such a cacophony of hateful rhetoric that it has been hard for those tasked with spotting the emergence of violent extremism to separate it from all the background noise of extremism. According to Moghadam and Eubank, groups associated with right-wing terrorism include white power skinhead gangs, far-right hooligans, and their sympathizers. The intellectual guides of right-wing terrorist movements espouse the view that the state must rid itself of the foreign elements that undermine it from within, so the state can provide for its rightful, natural citizens. In Australia, experts, police and others have been commenting on the failure of the authorities to act effectively in order to combat right-wing radicalization, and the government has vowed to put right-wing extremist individuals and groups under greater scrutiny and pressure, with the Home Affairs Minister Mike Pezzullo making strong comments to a parliamentary committee a week after the Christchurch mosque shootings in Christchurch, New Zealand. It emerged that 3 years earlier, Australian-born Brenton Harrison Tarrant, the perpetrator of the shootings, had been active on the Facebook pages of two Australian-based white nationalist groups, the United Patriots Front and True Blue Crew, and praised the UPF's leader neo-Nazi Blair Cottrell, as they all celebrated Donald Trump's victory in the 2016 P.